Starting. Okay. Recording started. Fine. Yeah, let's start. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Healthy Waves. This is the space where we dive into the transformative conversations with extraordinary experts to uncover the strategies, tools, and mindsets that can inspire and empower you to create the waves of change in your life. Today, we are diving deep into the two interconnected topics living in your flow state and mastering transitions as a skill of soulful leadership. So, whether you are navigating a career shift or maybe personal transformation or simply looking to align your life with purpose and the grace, then this episode is packed with insights you don't want to miss. Joining us today is the incredible Marin Oslak. So, welcome to the show, Marin.
I'm really excited to be here, and I love in the intro where you talk about the waves of change,
Yeah.
and I think that's very perfect because when I don't I don't know if you're a surfer or not, and I'm actually not. I'm very aware of them though, and it's like that process of navigating the waves of change, you have to be really aware, and there are skills for that. So I think it's very appropriate.
Exactly, exactly. Thank you so much for mentioning this. And also, before we start, I'll quickly love to introduce you to all of our listeners. Dear listeners, Marin is not just a business evolver. She is a guide for leaders who are ready to shift from the hustle and grind to a life of meaning, flow, and the connection. So, as the co founder of the Soulful Leader Project and co host of the Soulful Leader podcast, she helps high achievers step into a new paradigm of success, like one where effort feels lighter, impact grows deeper, and the missing pieces finally fall into place. So her journey from champion dancer to an high achieving entrepreneur to a flow consultant and executive awareness coach is definitely inspiring in every way. So she's here to show us how to embrace the transitions, master flow, and live with soulful leadership. So wait, let's dive in. Welcome to the show again.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Lovely, lovely. So, Marin, living in your flow state, I mean, you have described the shift from striving to thriving as dancing with life. So, can you share what flow state means to you and how do you discovered it in your own life?
Yeah, great question. Um, I'll address it with a story. And when I started an inner path very early in life. My mom got me started in personal development when I was like around 9 or 10, and I didn't really know what that meant. And how different I was from a lot of people until I was in my 20s and my 30s. And I noticed that I did business a little bit differently than most people did. And I, we're never perfect about anything. And I was not living in my flow state. And I realized that I was more in flow than most people. And that journey for me of noticing that I was different and I still wasn't as in flow as I wanted to be. I don't know if we ever are. Um, and we definitely get closer and closer. But one of the things that I noticed through running you mentioned that I had a dance studio, and I did. And one of the things that I noticed with that was I didn't want to keep beating my head up against the wall of success the way that it was defined for me. And I
Mm,
think that that process just alone, like recognizing that it's defined for us and we think that it's ours and it's not ours, right? It's somebody else's definition of success for us, but we're not even taught that. So we don't know who we are any more than it feels like we've embodied that we've taken it on ourselves. And so how do we find our flow state when we don't even know who we are or what we want?
So,
So as I continued, I started to realize that that was really a key. You know, you asked about flow state. How do we get to that flow state? I think the first step of it is recognizing that so much of our thoughts are not our own thoughts. There's somebody else's that we've taken on somewhere along the line, and their society's thoughts. So when we start to really check in and ask ourselves hard questions and be willing to look at, I don't know the answer to that, because I mean society teaches us we're supposed to know all the answers. Well, we're not. And the discovery
mhm,
process is actually part of finding your flow state.
mhm.
Yeah.
And like in your guide, spinning in your favor, you highlight practices for finding flow. So, could you share one or two actionable tips for someone who is looking to create flow in their day-to-day life?
Yeah, that's a great question. Kind of like what I was just talking about, finding out who you are and what your gifts and strengths are is, I would say, the main thing. The first, maybe not the main thing, and possibly a place to start for anybody. And we think we know what they are. And I know, at least here in the West, our school system is designed to make us normal. And normal, let's define normal. Who knows what normal is? Because most people are not normal, and yet we're tried to, we're put into schools where everything's in rows and we're expected to be a certain way. And whatever, if there's a differentiation, it's it's not kind of, it's taken out of us. It's said, no, don't do that. So if you're the person who's talkative and wants to talk to your neighbor and the joke teller, and you're told to sit down and shut up. And if you're the person who goes to the corner who just wants to read and be left alone, you're told to stand up and be social. And if you're the person who, like whatever your difference is, it's brought back into line and you're like, nope, do this, do this, do this, do this. And because of that, we often take our very, very strong gifts and put them into our shadow. We tuck them away and we say, ooh, that didn't feel so good. When you're told to sit down and shut up all the time, you don't want to like go out there and do that. We have one of two reactions. We're either the F you, I'm going to do it anyway, or it's the resignation or rebellion. So we rebel against it, or we resign ourselves to, well, I just won't do that anymore. And in either case, we've taken that gift and we've put it into our own wings instead of into our main way of being. So we're saying we're either resigned to not using it, or we're going to rebel against the world and say F you, and we're going to do it anyway. And neither of those is a flow state. So
Mm.
what are those gifts? The thing that I tell my clients to do is ask yourself, what did I do when I was younger that people told me to stop doing? It's a great place to start an exploration. And it's not just, again, you can go into rebellion about it and be like, well, I'm just gonna, or you can just get curious. And once you start getting curious, now you start to open the door to energy that you haven't felt in years and opportunities, because that's where your flow state is. That's where your genius lives. And when we're in our genius, time like disappears and we get so much done. And it just is such a glorious place to live. And most of us don't live there. We're not given the opportunity to, we're not even taught how to.
That's perfect, yeah. And also, you talk about the myth of enough. So, what do you say to the leaders who feel they will lose their edge if they stop striving for more?
Mm. That's quite the conundrum. We Yeah, we think that that's the answer is more, 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 and it's actually ask any leader who's shifted out of that mindset, and they'll tell you it's the best thing they ever did because there is a way to get more things done and be not get burnt out and not get into that downward spiral that happens when you're constantly pushing because it does take its toll. You know, there's a saying that says, you know, like win at any cost or whatever, and you know, do something at any cost. And the problem is that there is a cost. And when we're not aware of what that cost is, we're going to get blindsided by it. So again, we're going to go back to the curiosity thing. It's not saying that maybe you do want to win at any cost. Recognize what that cost may be. And maybe there's a different way so that you can win and it won't be at any cost. It'll be at any benefit. And so knowing, actually, I 100% know that there is a way to do that. It does involve our gifts and our strengths, and it involves being curious and opening ourselves to a way of being that is inclusive instead of exclusive. So you'll notice in the sentence, win at any cost, it's excluding all these things and it's this one track. The way that Dancing with Life works is that we're it works like nature. So nature is inclusive. Her best systems are very biodiverse. So it's going to include lots of different diversity and all kinds of things that allow it to thrive. What we tend to do when we go into a work mode is we exclude everything and we don't include the diversity. And now all of a sudden, when you look at monocultures in nature, they need lots of inputs from fake things. Like, you know, they need fertilizers and they need bug killers and they need this and they need that. Whereas nature herself, when she creates an ecosystem, is not a monoculture. It's a diverse system. And we can learn a lot about that, about ourselves from that, since we are a part of nature. So when we build in diversity into our lives, and I'll use a great example of, you know, if I am working 16 hours a day, I'm probably not eating well. I'm probably not getting physical exercise. I'm probably not out in the elements experiencing the sunshine and the wind, and I'm not getting the nutrients that my body needs. So I've eliminated all my diversity for this monoculture of work, and it will take its toll. So you'll end up your body's going to start to break down on you. Your mind won't be as fertile or as active. You won't, you know, you'll start to slow down. And so instead of doing that, coming at it from the other perspective of if I do include these other things, if I have diversity in my day, then I will actually be more productive for longer and I won't have the I'll call it the negative end results of, you know, heart disease or, you know, diabetes or whatever, you know, overweight or anxiety or all of the things that our culture is just plagued with right now.
So, yeah, okay, I was saying like you have experienced major transitions in your life, like from business to dance to coaching. Uh, what do you think makes a transition feel seamless or at least manageable?
Transitions are interesting things. I think that we get to be afraid of them because there's this aspect of unknown. And again, our culture celebrates this we have an answer for everything thing instead of allowing us to celebrate that we don't know.
Mm,
There's a wonderful woman named Carol Dweck who started looking at the difference between fixed mindsets and growth mindsets. And
mm,
a fixed mindset comes from that place of, I need an answer. And so once I
mm,
have an answer, I'm afraid to let go of it because I have this answer. And we get to
mm.
be threatened by the unknown. Whereas a growth mindset helps us to, people who develop growth mindsets are people who are always looking at the process of something instead of the answer to it,
Yeah.
right? So instead of, here's the answer, it's, I don't know the answer. Let's look at what a process might be. And so then
Mm,
we get excited by what the process might be. And I think that that's really the key to feeling comfortable in a transition is building processes and encouraging our brain. Our brain is malleable, it's which science told us many years ago that it's not, and they're finding that it is and that it regenerates and all kinds of cool stuff now. So we can train our brains to have a growth mindset and to be in this place of, the unknown isn't so scary. And I get to be in a process of exploration. And isn't that exciting? Instead of what most people experience, which is overwhelm, anxiety, that's scary. I don't want to be here. So they settle for something that they wouldn't normally want because it just gets them out of that fear. So I think that exploring growth mindsets. And Carol Dweck has got a great TED talk, and she's worked with a bunch of people. So I would recommend her work as far as helping with transitions. It's very
mm.
lovely work.
Understood. Understood. And so, in the leadership, transitions are inevitable. So, how can leaders guide their teams through change while staying grounded themselves?
Yeah, you do need to be very grounded in order
Mhm.
to lead a team through a transition. And I think that one of the diseases of leadership is the I'm supposed to know everything disease. We get caught in it, and then we teach our teams to treat us like that, to come to us for the answers like parents. And the most empowering thing that you can do for a team is to let them make their own mistakes. And I just read recently, actually, it was somebody that it was somebody that we were interviewing on our podcast. And he was saying that what he did was the first time he just hired a new person, and he waited until she made her first mistake, and then they had a party, they celebrated it. And I loved that because that is soulful leadership, because so often we're so afraid to make a mistake, either as a leader or as a team member. And when we can't make mistakes, that is part of that fixed mindset, we end up stopping ourselves from being the amazing beings that we are. And so the best way to stay grounded and B help your team through a transition is to allow them to make mistakes and celebrate them and say, yes, that's going to happen. It's not that I want you to make tons of mistakes just out of carelessness. It's the celebration of, it's okay. It's not even okay. It's encouraged, because part of a process is, oops, that's not what we wanted. Great. What do we learn from it? And where do we
Mm,
go next? So that's working again with process. What did we learn? Where do we go next? What did we learn? Where do we go next? So you'll notice that I'm not telling somebody what to do. What I'm doing is I'm asking them, what did we learn? Where do we go next? And so now it empowers my team, and they learn to work with transitions themselves. And I get to stay out of anxiety because my job as a soulful leader is to stay grounded and support my team. And the
mm.
easiest way to do that is through questions instead of answers.
Exactly. exactly. Perfect. So, so you have mentioned that your health and relationships transformed when you stopped striving. So, can you share how connecting with your flow impacted those areas in your life?
Yeah. So, one of the things that I noticed is that the striving that I did in my career,
Mm-hmm.
it was, I, c- it's very hard to separate what's going on in your job from what's going on in your relationships because we're whole beings and it's not meant to be separate. It's meant to overflow. And so when I'm anxious and striving at work, then I come home and I'm anxious and striving, or I'm trying to put it aside, which means I've put an entire side of my life off to the side so that I could be with my partner. And I didn't find either one of those to be ideal. It's like, so I was really looking at how do I be in my life with my whole life without putting one part of it aside and also then not getting anxious and striving in my personal relationship. And so the two went hand in hand in as I stepped further and further into the flow of, oh, this is what flow is. It's not just flow in work. It's not just flow in my business. It's flow in my relationships. It's flow in my abundance. It's flow in my income. It's flow with, my team members. Like it's like I said, we're whole beings. So it's not relegated to one aspect of my life. And that's the beautiful thing about dancing with life. It's not dancing with your career. It's dancing with life. It's all of it. Not
Mhm.
just one part. Yeah.
Understood. Understood. And like here's one more thing is like you have created the Soul Leader project. So what inspired this work? I mean, uh, how has it helped leaders transform their approach to life and the business?
Mm. So soulful leadership is very different. And I can just use marketing as one example. In traditional marketing, what we're taught is to basically find somebody's pain point and poke at it and then
Mm.
really make them feel yucky. And then, hey, I have the
Mm.
solution. Um, Yeah, we don't really love that. Like, who wants to be re-traumatized over their pain? And the challenge for us as people, as leaders, business people who have businesses and our job is to sell, is okay, so if I don't want to re-traumatize somebody, if I don't want to traumatize them, if I don't want to poke at their pain, how do I sell to them? How do I let them know that I have something that might be of interest? Because the aspirational aspect of it, of, like where we're headed to, doesn't always reach people. It does reach some people. That's one option. And
Mhm.
so in soulful leadership, that's one of the things that we talk about is how do you reach people so that you can actually touch their hearts without digging through pain to get there. Because as they've shown, we don't make decisions from our head. We make decisions from our emotions, from our hearts.
Yeah.
And we're connected. All of us are connected heart to heart. We we think we want to protect that, so we go up into our logical linear minds, and our limbic brain doesn't know that we're trying to do that, so it's the one who's making the decisions anyway. Um, so how do we speak to people's hearts
Mm.
without having to go through the trauma and the pain in order to get them into a fear of missing out? I mean, you can hear all the like the yuckiness of all of that. Like it's horrible. And yet that's traditional business. Um, so we work with people at a totally different level of like what's beyond that? And
True.
I think that I don't think I know that we need this desperately on our planet right now because we are we're having problems as a planet, as a species, and as individuals. And so there we've done it the other way. And the Einstein says the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. And we keep doing it. And we keep doing it. We keep doing it. So soulful leadership is about doing it
Mm,
differently and exploring together what that means. We're not saying we have all the answers. We want to hear from other people who are in their hearts, who have their solutions, who have stepped into their flow and into their genius. We're really interested in partnering and doing and exploring and expanding because as a species, we need it. We need this right now more than ever.
exactly. Exactly. Very true. So, like also, uh, if you could give your younger self one piece of advice, then what would it be?
I would say for my younger self
Yeah.
that I would want her
Mm-hmm.
to trust herself earlier. And in order to trust ourselves, we actually have to get to know ourselves.
Mm,
And that can feel scary because it it's like we're taught that we have to go to like go see a psychologist or whatever, like there's it doesn't the path to that feels like intimidating, and it's not.
mm,
It's a matter of questing. It's learning to be in the question instead of seeking the answer. So I would recommend to my younger self that she explore growth mindset instead of fixed mindset, because she definitely had a fixed mindset and was seeking answers instead of questions. So that's if I could go back and give her one piece of advice, it would be to seek the question instead of the answer.
it's lovely. Read. So, Marin, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your journey with us today, and your insights on living up in flow, embracing the transitions, and leading with soul are a reminder that success doesn't have to come at the cost of our well-being or our relationships. So, so for all the listeners, if today's episode has resonated with you, don't just stop here. Take action and download Marin's Ultimate Guide to Life spinning in your favor at marindance.com and tune into the Soulful Leader podcast and start exploring what it means to live in your flow state. And remember that the greatest waves of change starts with small and the intentional shifts. So stay inspired, stay aligned, and I'll see you next time on Healthy Waves. So till then, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.